Four waves of institution building in America. Be reading from a book titled Paul Starr, The Creation of the Media, Political Origins of Modern Communication. This is just the part of the introduction, only because of 86% people get their information off social media. Four ways of institution building in American history hold special importance for communications. It is said that when Alexander went to Egypt, he told his generals to marry the women, and therefore the women started taking on the sentiments of those who conquered them, and the children will continue to do the same. Another form of building institutions, lasting and sustainable institutions. Also, once you destroy the image of a people and how they see themselves, and the last thing that you destroy is their communication system, the manner in which they communicate. So therefore they will communicate that destruction. So how can humans overcome generating in their mind and then applying in their behavior means of being destructive or self-destruction, and to wind up worshiping that self-destruction by making a paradigm shift, motivation, and environment. You can see an image in a positive manner, in a positive way. It's something you can relate to and resemble. And the tricky part about it is through cinema or media, press, and television. You think that this is the image or the person that which you can maybe want to be like or emulate and even imitate. There was a teaching of Buddha as attributed to Buddha. Well, in paraphrasing, you cannot imitate anyone, and don't try to imitate Buddha. You can't imitate him. You come to an understanding of your own peace, where it's that you don't be a threat to yourself nor a threat to another. Yes, the American Revolution, the writing of the Constitution, and the development of such institutions as the post office. Four ways of institution building in America hold a special place in special importance for communications. The American Revolution, the writing of the Constitution, that which constitutes your values. 3, the development of, in the development of such institutions as 3, the post office, the common school, copyright law, and the popular press. Okay, I may interpret this wrong. 4 ways of institution building in America hold special place in importance of communication. The American Revolution, the writing of the Constitution, and the development of such institutions as the post office, common school, copyright law, and the popular press. These are the 4. Okay. Post office, that which delivers your mail. The common school, place of learning. Copyright law, and the popular press. In the early republic left a legacy of the foundation decisions that were especially important in shaping the legal and normative framework of the public sphere. Foundational decisions. The major decisions that is made in the House or the halls of Congress is really military. The military is designed to protect what has been established and even protect one's way of life. The new Constitution choices came with the rise of technological networks, beginning with the decisions to privatize the telegraph in the 1840s and culminating in the system of regulatory and antitrust policies imposed on telecommunications. Beginning around 1907, yet another wave came with the rise of the early mass media, the first mass press, then the motion pictures. Mass media, getting to the mass, a mass of something. Mass press. That which is pressing upon. You may need to straighten out something. Or you may, in doing so, you continue to push forward and move on. Strengthening connection to motion. Before the first law of the universe is motion. Putting into motion. Pictures. Images. Images of what? Of when it comes to the 4 ways of institution building in America. Post office, common school, copyright, and popular press. The images that is being projected. If one can control the images, one can go about controlling the manner and way and the language in which those images are communicating. With the dynamic tensions were dynamic, which means there will be an explosion. And tensions is associated with one's human tendencies. You can have something, a tendonitis. You can have something in you that in your muscle that is something that is very tender. Yes. But the tensions, I've learned that we can agree on the surface, but beneath the surface we are ours. Created by what? By immigration coming in and the industrialization led to both wider diversity and tighter moral regulation. The immigrants coming in and the industrialization, which becomes an industry, which led to a wider what? Diverse group. And then it led to a tighter moral obligation, because remember, he or she who controls the projection could project what they want to project about you. Remember, a moral regulation, which means there were some morals that need to be regulated. Some people who may be immigrating into the American culture could bring will bring their morals to the American culture, an American way of life, and it may not be accepted. And it could create tensions, because you can project them in a way that is immoral. You think about that. Some groups that will come over here, they will, without giving any specific names, is that the way to make it to make it financially, that they had to project themselves in images of gloom and doom. But yet it's sold for a group of people to maybe build up some money. And then after they build up some money, if they continue to project that image, then that would be on them. But they had a plan in the manner in which they were going about trying to create wealth, and just to find means to express themselves. Yes. But then there were those who refused to go about in a way that will perpetuate gloom and doom, because you can't change the world if you're bombarded with gloom and doom. So they don't participate in any motion picture or any way that is very degrading, giving derogatory and degrading ways. They don't want that to be projected. Yes. And there are those who are staunch in their own morals, their own religious, if I may use this word, religious beliefs, that they refuse to project themselves on the scene in a degrading, derogatory way, which can become very demoralizing. And people behind the scene who knows that, they will push that. Then it becomes a win-win situation between the two. Yes, this is business dealings, but people go about in their business dealings in means of ways of just exploiting you. So hey, and some do not. Some do not. Okay. Until repression created just after World War I, as it is called, and a new legal framework for freedom. Yes. Freedom of the spirit to rule of oneself, really. Freedom. But freedom of expression. Freedom of assembly, freedom of press, freedom of religion. Freedoms. Because when you live life not to impress but to express. For me, there's 3 core values: opportunity, expression, and appreciation. The freedom of expression. As the song says, express yourself. Began to take shape in the 1920s, and finally, though beyond the scope of this volume, sound much, the expansion of public interest, public investment, the expansion of public investment. Then we see the expansion of the public investment in science and technology and higher education during World War II. It sounds like also public persuasion to get the public on your side to justify one's behavior. So in early Cold War and ensuring revolutions in computers, electronics, and telecommunications, again set off the most recent wave of the institutional design and transformation. Telecommunications, ensuing revolutions in computers. Remember, computers to see what you can compute. Sending electronic waves. Now some will call it algorithm, but determining send electronic and then it's telling you, like telepathic waves, so to speak, but it's telling you this is the modern way in which you or we are communicating this particular message or idea to you. And the image that is being projected is the modern way in which you are communicating this idea to others. It is like something that is being forced on you. Of this design, like an architect or something that is architectural in transformation. It is moving, the formation, and formation is like it is taking its position, it is taking its stance. And what is taking its stance? When it comes to the development of such institutions as the post office, posting up is your position. Territorial, common school, copyright law. You may think another way. I'm not saying what you may think, but it also sounds like one wants to be a copycat, and that which being a copycat becomes popular. Okay. As the United States developed internally, so the relationship of American communications to the external world. Now, this is done to try to communicate to the external world. And we see this technology of internet now. It's communicating across the globe, radio as well. But it's established relationships with people across the world. Yeah. And it's very sensitive. Water is very sensitive. When you put a pebble on a rock and you see the waves, it's a form of communication. Communicating really to your senses. To the external world, outside of yourself. It almost sounds like aesthetics. Communication of aesthetics. Trying to live in a world outside of yourself and trying to control the manner and way in which one should see themselves and communicate that image of themselves in another world or across the globe. Okay, communication to this external world change. Reality change. Yep, reality change. So, the young republic, that which being republicized, like the earlier colonies, belong to the development periphery, outside, but periphery, parameters too, periphery on the outside of an Atlantic Communications Network Center in what? In London, while standing apart from Europe in the development of its own institutions. The United States by 1850 became more of an originator of communications technologies. By this period, it was already a leader in certain aspects of communications. Without being a center, it had graduated in effect from the dependent periphery to the independent semi-periphery in the world economy, while Britain remained the dominant power in communications, in part through its control during the late 19th and early 20th centuries of the global submarine cable network in the decades after World War I, as the United States gained economic and military power. It increasingly became the dominant global center in communications. Think about the images that is being controlled and dominated and communicated by, let's say, different ethnic groups. Let's say you would say the Jews, you would say African Americans, you would say whites. I think some brother named Allen wanted to own a TV station or something, or radio station, something that deals with communications. And then I think you look at a Hughes sister, maybe on a network channel, like on network channel. I believe that's the case with her, with the sister. The trying to control or controlling that which is being projected on the screen. And even though, with all due respect, it could be initially controlled by the one who produced the initial footage of it, and the original footage is to communicate not a good image, and then it comes down to those who the majority of the people who are on that screen are of the same ethnicity. That's still that same image is being projected to the people, even though it's owned by the same ethnic group who controls this network center of communication, but not the original, that which was produced originally through the cinema. Those who produced it. So that's why you have certain maybe musicians want to own the original copy. Yep. So you got to think about the distribution centers as well, controlled. But yeah, so military power increasingly gained economic and military power, and they used that to dominate the global center of communications and technology and entertainment for export. Now, people know, some people are familiar with Compensatory Code, Nina Fuller, and Dr. Francis Cress Welsing. Control all aspects, media, entertainment, politics, and education. All this. Yes. That's fine. So, by the late 20th century, what had been the American exception in communications, private telecommunications, and commercial broadcasting, for example, increasingly became the rule. In short, though the differences had by no means been completely eliminated, the divergence in communications that opened up between the United States and Europe in the 18th century has increasingly been settled on American terms. Economic necessities is important when people agree. But he or she who controls the economic necessity determines the status of that relationship. So it's all about status control. I can elevate your status in the field of entertainment and education. I can elevate it or I can de-elevate it. I can prompt you up or I could bring you down. But I have to control the image that is being projected about you because it must sell. And there must be a financial or a profit or a gain from it. And you who are participant in that, you must go out of your way to sell that image in the manner and way which it should be communicated to the world. However demeaning, degrading it may be. And if it's done with a sense of moral obligation, it would be a positive image. I think it was something that Julius Nyerere did over in Tanzania when he was doing plays. He was everything that was done in a positive image when it comes to his people over there. Communication in America did not unfold in a uniform or linear way, less open in its public life and lagging in every dimension of education and communications. The South, both before and after the Civil War, departed from prevailing patterns elsewhere in the United States. During the antebellum era, the planter class limited public debate. The press did not only denied literacy to blacks, but opposed public education for whites as well. I always say give to the gift of social literacy because I say that our social interaction skills are diminishing. When we see media, press, and television, and it's where we get, say, a large amount of our information, maybe over 70 or 80. I may have said 86%. I think the last data that I saw was 86%. Yes. So when you talk about John Jackson, Man, God, and Civilization, and Will Durant, a civilized society is a literate society. Yes. So some of the changes that the revolution set in the motion elsewhere in the United States were therefore delayed in the South long after blacks throughout the nation were denied full participation in public discussion. Now, discussion is allowed. We look at models such as, we know Facebook. I don't really like using their names, but through media now, even though I did use the name, new ways of being able to participate in public discussion. Let's put it that way. Yes. Throughout the nation, the rights of free expression and access to education and other resources, something that was what we says it being delayed. Progress can be delayed, but it can't be denied. Resources. I believe it was Malcolm who said that he couldn't believe that people or blacks, I don't know what he said, didn't have access to wealth. We're talking about accessibility because he helped at Reginald Lewis and his Beatrice products. So, but yeah, it's about access to resources, financial resources. Because remember, it is stated earlier that when America really became the center of it, or came in power, after World War I, the United States gained economic and military power and increasingly became the dominant global center in communication. So that is a means and a manner and a way in which people who have been projected in a very negative way, you get the economic power, you form a armament, and in forming that armament, you a group of people that you can control the image that is being projected and the manner and way in which it is being communicated. So you control what is called the language. The language. Yes. It says, I come to make the crooked places straight. That's perverted language. You control the perversion. Okay, now, women thought an increasingly important part of the reading public in other markets. Read, yeah. Think about something when it comes to your origin. The attribute of your origin. And nobility and dignity. Yes. The markets of cultural goods during the 19th century also suffered various forms of political and educational exclusion in the society at large. After a long expansion of the sphere from the Revolution through the mid-19th century, a more repressive tendency set in the Civil War through World War I and the immediate aftermath. Both of these wars generate pressures for stronger state control of communication, being censored. Yes, or some will call it moral regulation, if I may use that term, as I stated earlier, or as it was written and I read earlier. There was typical other times, all these deviations. There's a teaching that says on the straight path, upward climb, and made those who have favor in that, not deviating, not participating in any unjust act to anyone, doing any unjust act. Deviation from the society's ideal standards. Someone can have a problem with the word standard. Led to political struggles. And these struggles, it's like political struggles, a political national identity. And these struggles change the practical working of communications. Politics come into being. Though the changes were often presented and understood as reaffirmations of the founding principles, let's work together. Yes, no single idea, interest, or condition explains the distinctive path taken by communications in America. But the challenge of building a continental republic helps to the account for much what was distinctive about the early direction of the national policy and private investment. There we go. The national policy. Policy is driven by interest. There's a place, I think, in Greece, I think, associated Greece or Greek, one of the two, police, where only the wealthy can vote. Yes, police. And you see the word in there is police. National policy. Oh, let's say national police. Of this national identity. Of the manner and way in which something should be communicated. And that which should be invested in as a national identity. And that which can serve as a benefit to the nation, home, and abroad. Yes. But the challenge of building, again, a continental republic is like an evolving process. I think Kwame Ture talks about the interruption of African people from what they call a tribe to clan to family, to nation or something to continental people did not fully develop to become a continental people. Fundamental importance of long-term development of communications were the spheres of initial demands of the state and national building through choices about postal systems and press. Relative to Europe, in particular as to Britain and France, which will serve as our principal points of comparative reference, communication in America tended to exhibit a series of related characteristics. It can relate to the characteristics. Yes. So, as you see that America can relate to the characteristics of Britain and France. Because if you look at certain places that people, Anglo-Saxon, whatever we call them, people of a different hue, there are certain characteristics about themselves that they can relate to. So if they can relate to it, then therefore they will invest in it, because it serves as a benefit. And the manner way, so which ones communicate. Communication in America tend to exhibit related characteristics. When you observe a thing, you try to study its character. You also try to understand its nature. So high levels of, a greater openness and transparency in the public sphere. Higher levels of commercialization, greater decentralization, and there is a book called The Industrialization of America. But that's another topic of it. So, more rapid extension, decentralization. More rapid extension and ubiquitous penetration of communication networks, the greater receptivity to the new products. The greater the receptivity, receptors in your brain, in your nervous system, or in your brain, 1, 2, neurotransmitters, which means something that's being communicated. We use the word development. It says that the brain is not fully developed until it's 25 years of age. So if something that is in your brain and going through your brain that is unhealthy or inappropriate, it throws you off. It's not fully developed. So the neurological transmission, the manner in which you communicate will be inappropriate. That's why it says that one social interaction skills, man, is diminishing. Yeah, it is. Because I realize if you have not dealt with any crisis or trauma, whatever it is, we want to use these terms now, these medical terms. You don't deal with them early on. It's like child abuse and child neglect. You may have had the basic necessities, food, clothing, shelter, but you may have been neglected mentally and emotionally. If you don't deal with those things in the early part of your life, later on in your life, it's going to affect you, because what happens is it affects our decision making. It affects our decision. So technology relatively little support until the 20th century for the more abstract sciences in theoretical innovation. Theory. Yeah. Anyway, so why did American communication diverge from European patterns? The idea that the United States was created differently, developed differently, and thus had to be understood differently. Yeah. And that differs from other countries in ways both good and bad, has long been the theme for foreign investors, social theorists, and historians alike. Some of the same factors cited in such accounts influence the distinctive course taken by communications in America. If you look at the diversity of groups, it's that they're not the same. It's not monolithic. We're not a monolithic people. We all think different. So that's why it says that religiously, it says that what they call prophets taught Tahi, they call it, and I don't get caught up in these really religious terms, but all had a contribution to make. So we all have to make the contributions We all can make hopefully a constructive rather than a destructive, a healthy rather than an unhealthy contribution to this society in which we live. Yeah. So, differently. So we must learn to overcome our differences. And I call it one of the aspects of I call it a social disorder learning disability. SDLD. That's fine. Some of the same cited accounts and in the communication taken by the Communication America, the absence of certain legacies in feudalism and absolutism and monopolistic printing guides and centralized state and censorship had an early effect on the American development. Now, you know it says taxation or representation is tyranny, that you cannot rule, govern, and control what we call the American people from overseas to over here, and not to mention the tea tax. But yes, you're not going to place that on the what's called the American people, because as it says that the American people do things a little differently. You know, and it's kind of hypocritical for any nation to try to impose their will or their way of doing things on other nations, or other, even what is called sovereign nations, or other. And it's not good for any people to place certain things on how people should do a certain thing. So there's another religious teaching that you shouldn't impose anything on anyone. Yeah, no impositions, no impositions. So the revolution and affirmation of the rights of freedom of press and a de facto open is beautiful, 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 man. These are beautiful, man. Some will call it associated that with some Islamic teaching. But beautiful, man. These are some beautiful ideals, man. Beautiful ideas. Yeah. Embryonic public sphere during the late colonial period. The geopolitical position, geopolitical politics of the new nation was also a factor. Geographic politics, geographic, political, these geo areas which people live in. I liken it unto municipal power, and I liken it unto state power, and I liken it unto federal power. That's what I liken it unto. Because you can teach people other languages, you can't teach them how to govern, that they must learn for themselves. How a person running his or her household, that's on them. How a person lives his or her life, that's really on them. Yet, there's a saying that your conscience must be your guide. Because anyone who exceeds their limits should be exposed, and that which one would do that is contrary to nature. But be careful what you put out. We may not like how it returns, which means it becomes unmanageable and uncontrollable. Yes. So may we continue to be citizens. When you're citizens, you're civilized. Yes. And that's how we interact with one another. I'm still talking about how our social interaction skills are diminishing. We're becoming uncivil, more uncivil. Yes, develop a centralized state with the standing army and for just this reason, it experienced less pressure to impose a military security-minded framework on new communication technologies such as the telegraph. By the time the United States became more embroiled in the international conflict, it had already established institutional patterns in communication that reflected the earlier situation. Moreover, from an earlier point, because of the country's rapid expansion of the West, Americans approached technical and organizational challenges in communication from a continental perspective. This is Kwame Ture. This is what he's to evolve to a continental people. That's something to be explored. That is something to be explored. Yeah. Yes. So, reflected early situation and challenges Okay, the American approach to technical from a continental perspective. Yes. Building postal, telegraph, and telephone networks on a far more extensive scale than any single nation in Europe. There's some brilliance there. There's some brilliance there. And the enormous domestic. See, you can tell the meaning of a thing in the context in which it's used. You can tell the mentality of one's collective psychology. Yes. The enormous domestic, and these are people who came to appreciate the ideas of the ideals and the idea of America. The ideas. You convert words into ideas, words into meaning, and meaning to something that what you act on. Ideas. So many people came to say, man, live up to the American creed. Amir as a host. There's another way to express that word Amir. In the Arabic sense, I'm just not privy to be able to share that at this moment in time. Very powerful stuff, man. Very powerful stuff. In America, very, very powerful ideas. The sheer scale of these networks, enormous domestic market, they helped to create and had a pervasive effect on the productivity and the competitive language of nearly all communication industries, particularly telecommunications, motion pictures, and broadcasting. Motion pictures. Remember the silent films? People just saw the image. You couldn't hear the voices, but you saw. It was something that was in motion that was attractive. Broadcast. At the nation's founding, however, Americans were concerned with building not just a continental nation, but a republican, which means republican, that which can be republished or reproduced to the public. One, and their choices about communication reflected distinctive ideological preoccupations, particularly about the role of the state. The role of the state. Remember I said earlier about when it comes to political, it's the municipal power, state power, and federal power. I think I said it in that manner. A Republican one. Okay. And their choices about communication reflected distinctly ideological preoccupations, particularly about the role of the state. After the failure of the Articles of Confederation, the framers of the Constitution approached the problem of state building with creative reluctance. State building. The Empire State. Oh man. To me, state is a condition. Yes. No nation better illustrates the proposition that liberal state building, involves the building of limitations. Some theorists and historians have argued that the early American Republic had no state at all, while others have contended that it did indeed have a state, as the South certainly discovered when trying to secede from it, but that was no sense of the state because the federal government had limited checks and balances, executive, judicial, and legislative, limited administrative capacities until the end of the 19th century. How we limited the manner and the way in which we are able to communicate with one another. Who controls those limitations? Is it due to resources? That I am not able to communicate with an individual who may have those resources? Because those who control the means of productivity may use that through media, press, and television, or any industry, whether it be entertainment or whatever, that they are they have distanced themselves, and the manner and way in which I am able to interact with them is through social media. Or the manner and way in which we're able to interact with them is through social media. And I said that if that interaction is being diminished, and if it's deceptive, degrading, demoralizing, dehumanizing, and disrespectful, then more than likely it will get into the mind or the brain, and if it has been done so at an early age and has not been corrected with such fairy tales, Mary had a little lamb, and not knowing the meaning behind that. Or we sing these fairy tales of these holidays of Christmas or Halloween or whatever. It affects one's thinking, it affects one's mind. And knowing if one has been damaged at an early age beyond race, class, gender, religion, economics, and politics, it creates what is called these lone wolves. Yes. Oh, this is serious stuff. This is serious. Whether you want to accept it or not. But yes, okay. Communication does not fit this chronology. Okay. Capacities, the human capacity, the tolerance, the human tolerance, the human tendency to only take but so much. The brain, the mind can only take but so much. If you can bombard and you see all this negative stuff, you only can take but so much, man. Now, some could take more than others. More power to them that can. Okay. The federal administrative capacity, because of this role, was to facilitate rather than to extract, or controlling, to facilitate. The federal administrative capacity was to facilitate. Federal. State. What is to be administrated. That which is to be controlled. Or what is to be facilitated. What message is being conveyed? What image is being conveyed from one's municipal power of positions, one's state power of positions, one's federal power of position, and even one's home? What is standing over us? What is ruling over us? What is governing us in our everyday lives? I will like to go on, but I will stop right there. I could talk about this introduction could deal with capitalism, the newcomer to communication in America. Let's talk about some internal tensions when it comes to information that refer especially to what data is relevant and what data is not relevant. What is considered to be factual, unfactual, that which considered to be practical and unpractical, that which seems to be rational and unrational. But I will close with the final part of this reading. It says, no single country is responsible for the making of modern communications, but the United States has played a single role for the past 2 centuries in such developments of the constitutional protection of the rights to free expression. Very obvious. Thank you for these ideas or the influence of those ideas, even and is associated with some Native Americans. And the Africans, some would say you're not Africans, but you're Native Americans. That's fine. Some don't even associate with themselves as being a part of no tribe. That's fine. It is the evolving process of people want to be identified with something, and that gives them their national identity. But that's politics to me. But I think we all should have a universal identity. I like this. We really are a diasporic people, or a spiritual being having a humanist physical experience. A United States, Tahid, states of conditions, unity, contributing to these states of conditions. Free expression, my core values are opportunity, expression, and appreciation. The opening up of government. Govern that which is meant to govern, to rule. Open up to public scrutiny. Accept the criticism from the criticizer. The development of comprehensive postal system. Comprehensive. The calm and the hinsive, or it's like when you put the hinges on the door, the opening and the closing. The rise of the popular press. The spread of literacy and primary education. Elementary, the elements. Maybe it's a primitive education. And then the development of that education, the diffusion of the telephone, the invention of broadcasting. People can paint a broad picture, and that's not necessarily the case. But broadcasting, being broad, to becoming more specific. And the development of the satellite communication. We're still talking about forms of communication. The rise of the Of the internet. You're in the net. The spider web is only as strong as the weakness of its victim. And other recent changes too numerous to mention. The global influence of the American media and the American model now puts at an even heavier responsibility on the United States than in the past. History has no basis for a complacent triumphalism about the American technology and institutions, especially if the original grounds of policy are forgotten. Freedom is at stake now in choices about communication as it was at the founding of the Republic. The question no longer whether a post-industrial information society is coming. It has come. But what kind of society it proves to be will ultimately be a political choice. This is what he's saying. A political national identity. So it's politics. Someone says it's the lowest accommodation of science. So it's all political. The political identity is spread abroad. So we see that the game is being played by people becoming involved in this type of game, if I may use it. Game for the game. Hey, that's not denying or overlooking the positives, or the positive impact that some has made. It says only because the future hinge on decisions. We're not a product so much of our environment. We're a product of the decisions that we made, yet to be made. The political origins of the modern communications ought to command our attention. He's selling this particular book by way of his introduction. Well, there was a saying, if I can remember, by Robert F. Kennedy. He says the problem of government is not its, what he says, it's the misuse of its power. I'm paraphrasing that, but he said that instead of making money off the people, we should make money for the people. You check it out. You check it out for yourself. But until next time, talk to you.